Let's get this bad boy started. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us again this morning. Susan, would you like to call roll call and establish quorum, please?
Sure. So Darren Van Steenwick.
Present.
Dave Tamayo.
Here.
Ronna Brand.
Here.
Mike Duran.
Present.
And Curtis Good.
Here.
So all 5 board members that we are currently serving are here as quorum.
Excellent. Feels like a full house. Let's flag salute, please. Join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Is there any public comment for items not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none. Review and approval of minutes from the July 17th board meeting. Well, that was... Mike Duran made a motion to approve. You just jumped straight into that one, didn't you? Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any comment? I'll get comment from the public. Don't worry. Curtis, is there any discussion on that from board members? Okay, any discussion from the public on the last set of minutes? Okay, hearing none, let's take a vote.
Darren Van Steenwick.
Approve.
Dave Tamayo.
Yes.
Ronna Brand. Mike Duran.
Aye.
And Curtis Good.
Yes.
Here we go. Nice. So moving on, DPR update. Peggy, would you mind stepping up? And as a reminder, please speak into the microphone. You are being webcast, so please speak in the microphone and introduce yourself, name, and organization.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay. My name is Peggy Byerly. I'm with the Department of Pesticide Regulation here in Sacramento, and I am here to give a couple of industry and, to give some agency management appointment updates, as well as some training updates that were recently conducted for the counties. So my first update is on October 14th this month. Governor Newsom announced, and it was posted in the news and online, various agency appointments, including the fact that Mr. Val Docini, who has been serving as DPR's acting director since the beginning of June of this year, has been appointed as the director of DPR. He had served, prior to our appointment here, he had served various legislation positions, both in California state and in federal related, and also administrative earlier in his career with USDA and California Farm Service Agency. So Mr. Docini has a very balanced resume, a lot of experience in the big picture aspects, so we're very excited about his appointment last week. The governor also announced at that same time, October 14th, Mr. Jesse Cuevas is DPR's new Chief Deputy Director under Mr. Docini. Mr. Jesse Cuevas has previously been the Assistant Director of the DPR's Pesticide Programs Division for the past 2 years, and prior to that, he was had various legislative position experience with DPR and other related agency. As far as our training updates, between October 1st and 3rd this month, we had in Irvine, in Orange County, Southern California, our structural training. This is the one that's code mandated by Business and Professions 8616, that the Structural Board Agency and DPR will jointly develop and train the counties on the various aspects of the structural inspections, investigations, and so forth. So it was conducted over that 3-day period, and it covers licensing, code sections, and so forth. that the counties go out and enforce. The attendees are also trained on the licenses themselves that the board issues, company registration, and the scope of the categories. This training was very much appreciated. There were a total of 94 people present at the Irvine Structural Training this month, 66 of whom were from various counties. A total of 17 counties in California sent staff to our training this year. And we had representatives from every region, not just Southern California, as part of the county staff trained. We also had a number of newer state, both board agency and DPR, newer staff that received this training as well. I would also like to formally acknowledge and thank a key partner every time we give this training is the structural companies that generously volunteer their operator and field rep licensees to assist us with mock field demonstrations of structural equipment and share their expertise and insight with the new county and new state folks being trained at this session. They partner with us, and once again, I've been going over the evaluations, and both companies had high praise from the attendees as to how much they appreciated. For Tuesday, October 1st, our Branch 2-3 demo training partner was Mr. Curtis Good and licensees from Newport Exterminating. We thank them. On Wednesday, October 2nd, for our Branch 1 day focus, Mr. Lee Whitmore and his licensees from Quality Pest Services. So, I'm going on record again. Both of these companies have volunteered in the past, so we feel particularly appreciative that they're spending those resources to volunteer again and partner with us so successfully. Thank you. Are there any questions on any of my updates? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you much. So, any questions for Peggy before she fully disappears? Okay, how about from the public? I'm gonna open it up to the crowd. Anybody have any questions for Peggy?
Do you do the training once a year, twice a year, as needed?
Would you please come forward and speak into the microphone again? Identify yourself and the organization you're representing.
Hi, Carrie Winbill Rojas from the University of California Statewide IPM program. My question is, how frequently do you give these trainings?
The code does not specify a minimum frequency. Mm-hmm. What has happened during my 18 years with DPR is there is a particular structural fund that provides that resource to our agencies. Ms. Susan Saylor, if she had any further insight about that, if necessary, after I've answered part of what you asked. So in recent years, we have been able to give it approximately once every year to year and a half. We rotate between Southern California and for NorCal, the venue is in the Bay Area because those are the greatest concentrations of county programs. Mm-hmm. So for a particular area, north versus south, it may be a couple years in between, but the training is open to any counties who have particularly new staff who need to be trained. They are the priority regardless of what area of California they are in. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So moving on to the Executive Officer's Report. Susan?
Okay, so licensing survey results are in your board packages along with WDO activities. If you have any questions on those, I'll answer those for you, and then I have just a few other things to report on.
Yes, I have one. The applicator's passing rate extremely jumped up. Mm-hmm. Do you contribute that to anything?
Probably several factors. The the current exam has been out for a while now. This is for this fiscal year, so those rates are for July till now. Sitting in the town hall meeting that we had yesterday for a new applicator occupational analysis, it sounds like the industry has been picking up on how they're training the applicators, maybe even to the point of training them to have FR skills. So that's probably contributing to the passing rate being so high as well.
Okay, thank you.
And then on that note, it also looks like that the FR passing rate has gone up relatively steeply as well. Because last time we met, it was a 24%, and now we're at a roughly 40%.
Right.
And do you attribute that to OPES removing questions and kind of handling the new test the way that they normally do, or
Yes.
to something else?
Yes. I mean, as mentioned in the occupational analysis town hall yesterday, OPES is doing a great job of reviewing all comments that come in on every question, and also checking all questions to see how they're scoring, and they're pulling questions that score poorly and putting them back into an SME group to be reworked.
Okay.
So those are all factors that are helping to increase those passing rates.
Okay. Excellent.
I have just a few other things I wanted to comment on. As far as staff changes, we will be losing a person at the end of October. Francisco Del Poza is our complaint unit. He has accepted a promotion with another state agency, and his commute is going to be 10 minutes now. So, I couldn't match that. So we will be losing him. We've already submitted paperwork to HR to advertise for that position again. And then the only thing else that I wanted to mention is we have upcoming, this is like part 2 of our branch 1 OPR and FR occupational analysis. We had a workshop in November and in March in Irvine at Curtis's location. He was so gracious to provide. And that was the first part of getting a new occupational analysis completed for the Branch 1 category, so we can start working on getting new exams. I did submit some information out to PCOC and several other contacts I made. Our next workshop is on November 5th through November 7th. Again, that location is going to be at Newport Exterminating in Irvine. As of yesterday, we only had 3 operators and 1 FR signed up. And we need at least 8 OPRs for the 3 days and probably at least 6 FRs for the first 2 days. So any help getting the word out, industry. I talked briefly with Chris already. Chris, do you want to comment about recruitments you can try and do? And
Chris Reardon, representing Pest Control Operators of California. Yeah, Susan and I chat a little bit. We expect that, as is the president of the board knows, we're going to sit down with our leadership and talk about ways that we can generate some interest and maybe designate some folks to attend those hearings. There's no way we can do this without, deep membership involvement. So I told Susan we're going to do everything we can to make sure we get folks there.
Okay. Like I said, I just want to point that out again because we haven't had new exams in a very, very long time. So this is a great opportunity to get some new exams in place for the OPR and FR Branch 1. I don't have anything else unless you have questions for me.
Not a question, a comment. I think since my tenure on this board, Frank Muniz has been mentioned every time in our packet. So I'd like to personally thank him for his service and everything because he's always mentioned how courteous and professionally does. So thank you to Frank.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll pass on that information.
Any other comments from the board on what Susan talked about? How about comments from the public? Questions? Okay. Very good. Moving on to the update of the status of the research proposals. Looking at this in our board packet, there is a few. We have a few projects that are going on. Several of them have already. Actually, it looks like most of them. The way I was reviewing it, most of them have already started, and we will be expecting a report from them when?
The last progress reports that we received were, most of the contracts did start in October.
Okay.
There's work being done on all but one, I believe. So we did get progress reports in April. Next progress reports are due the end of October, so we figure that we would be in your board packages for March. I also wanted to mention that upon request from the board members, we can also ask the researchers to come and make a presentation at some point, depending on what you'd like to do or how far in, or based on the amount of funds that have been expelled so far. It's kind of in your ball court. Yes, Dave?
I was curious about Dr. Quinn's project. Have we been in? I noticed that we haven't received any invoices or reports since April. Well, I guess we wouldn't have expected another report, but has there been any contact to indicate whether there's any problem with making progress on this?
I know I've spoken with her.
Okay.
And I don't know if anybody else from the public can respond, but I believe that she's actually looking for because what she wants to do, she needs to get some approval from some other agencies because of the type of testing she wants to do.
Sure.
And so she's still working out the specific details on what that approval from those other agencies are. Dealing with some of that tracking that she wants to do.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, she's working very. I know she's working very hard to try and get this started. And there's just a few kind of hitches in the giddy up that are causing her to not be able to start it yet.
Issues with federal and state permits and.
It's taken a little longer than I think that she was initially expecting.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else has any other comments or can tell me I'm wrong. Wouldn't be the first time. I would say that a report, a presentation probably wouldn't be necessary until kind of the conclusion of their projects. I don't know if anybody else from the board has any other specific opinions on that, but that'd be my opinion. Okay. Any other comments on that agenda item from the board? How about from the public? Okay, moving on. There is we have an update on the C&T, the certification and training ruling from EPA, and we're basically going to ask DPR to step in and kind of respond as to how our state interpretation and what we need to do from there.
Sure. So I think I spoke with you guys.
I'm sorry, if you would name and organization,
My name
please.
is Leslie Telpasanu with the Department of Pesticide Regulations, Pest Management, and Licensing Branch. So I have been sort of the lead on the new certification and training rule and making sure that California's plan meets the new federal requirements. We are on track with that. I believe at the past meeting I had written a memo about a few things that we needed from the Structural Pest Control Board so we could submit our state plan. I have gotten all that information from the Structural Pest Control Board, so thank you to Dave Skelton and Susan Saylor for your help in that. So we are on track to submit our state plan to the EPA March 4th, 2020. And then after that, the EPA has, again, 2 years to approve that plan. The thing that we are looking at most, or that may change most or impact both of our programs the most, would be continuing education requirements. The EPA has a requirement that the states must have a process to verify identity and successful completion of the course, which becomes a little bit more difficult with online and distance courses. So we're working with the EPA. We have a couple proposals that we would like to put forward to them as far as how we're going to address that. And then once we've worked through that with the EPA, after our state plan's been submitted, I'm hoping a few months in, we'll be able to have more details to share about that and what that will look like. But we're hoping to try and retain the ability to do online courses, but still meet the federal requirement for identity verification and successful completion. Does anyone have any questions?
So you said that, so again, to confirm that it sounds like that just the online and distance CEUs or CEU courses are the biggest hurdle. What other hurdles do you see that we're going to have to overcome?
For the Structural Pest Control Board, not so much. Most of the things are going to be accomplished. I think one of the concerns was recertification exams, but my understanding is you guys are moving forward with removing those. So that's kind of one thing that's going to be taken off the plate that would have been a concern under CNT. So currently, the only concern is continuing education requirements and making sure that we're meeting the EPA standard for that. But otherwise, our programs appear to be in compliance.
That's good.
Yeah, it's very good.
It's good. Excellent. Are there any questions from the board?
No questions from me.
How about from the public? Questions on that? Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
I just want to thank Leslie for all the help she's given us. She's really been invaluable. So thank you, Leslie.
Well, actually, I just have one quick question. When do we think that, if and when we have to make any changes, what do you think the timing of those will be?
So are you talking about implementation or just when we can come with more details about what the EPA's
I'm thinking more kind of long-term implementation.
So our goal is to implement everything by the time that the EPA approves the state plan, which would be March of 2022, which under the typical OAL schedule would fall April 1st. I believe that's when the rules would officially be in place. So that's our goal with our department, to make those changes by. That being said, if things come up that delay that time frame, we do have the ability to work with the EPA to explain that, why things are taking longer, because they realize that states have different legislative processes that can make it go beyond the 2022 deadline.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
No problem.
So we have quite a bit of time then that we're going to have to be able to deal with this. Excellent.
Yep. A couple years.
Thank you. Any other comments on that? Very good. Next item on the agenda is the annual review and possible action regarding the board's research fund. Susan, did you want to address this?
Yes. So it was requested of us to make sure that this gets on our annual meeting. So this will be on our October meeting every year. That's our annual meeting that we have. The purpose of this is to keep the board members apprised of it, basically how much money is in that fund and expenditures that are planned that are already set aside or encumbered for that fund. So the only thing that I would probably bring to your attention is the third line down, which is unencumbered funds available. So then if you look out to, say, fiscal year end 2021, there'll be approximately $311,000 in that fund on June 30th of 2021. June 30th of 2022, just under $500,000 in that fund. So while I wouldn't recommend that you have us start the process to go out for a proposal just yet, that would be something that I would recommend that we start looking at maybe close to the end of 2021 fiscal year.
Okay, so you're talking about potentially then reissuing funds 2021 then, which would be in, what, a year and a half-ish?
Right. Start the process with Department of Consumer Affairs, Business Services offices to do a research proposal request
Okay.
to go out to the industry. Out to the universities.
Okay.
So we'd probably want to not just start the process, but have it sort of calendared out as far as what we need to do internally for approvals and things like that, right?
Yes.
So we'd have a plan for how we're going to move it through our process so that it's ready by the end of 22.
By the end of 21, 22.
Yeah.
That would be my recommendation, yes, because by the end, June 30th of 22, then you're looking at approximately $458,000. So that virtually could be 2 research proposals that we receive, maybe 3. As all of you are aware, currently we have 5 proposals in place that were a total of just over $1 million. So I think it's premature to start it yet, but maybe October of next year, you would say, okay, staff, start that process now.
Go ahead. I agree. Yeah, it feels like we just funded these.
Well, we did.
Yeah, and so
October last year.
Yeah, so I don't want to. I'd rather kind of tap the brakes on this one, and not even basically punt until next year.
That's what I would recommend too, for at least one fiscal year, and then of course we can reevaluate what the balance is in the fund at that time as well.
Okay.
Yes, my only comment would be to wait to see what the outcome is of some of the research that's going on now to see if maybe piggyback on some of that might be needed afterwards.
Yeah,
So
it's a good idea.
That's a good point too. Yeah.
Well, I think that timing works out pretty well because I would anticipate by the time we actually released it at the end of 21-22, we'd have a much better idea of what the results of those were. And then if we start, we have that calendar in mind. I know that us getting started on the last round that we did, we kind of didn't really think ahead as well as we might have. So the what you have in mind seems like a good timeline to make sure that we're in sync with the availability of funds.
Right.
Thank
right.
you.
I like it. Any comments from the board on this? Comments from the public? Okay, moving on through the agenda. Annual review and possible action regarding the board's policies and procedures. I know this is something that Susan wants to handle.
So again, this is another item that we review every year annually, and that's our October meeting. So it's in your board packages for that reason. We do have 2 recommendations from a staff's perspective. The first one would be on page 8, G5. G5 addresses the timeline for board meeting minutes to be completed by. 30 days is kind of a short window. In addition, all board meetings are now webcast, so we don't see there's quite the urgency to have board meeting minutes completed that quickly. So we're asking to have that extended out to either 60 or 90 days to have those actual board meeting minutes finished.
Is there a preference specifically that you would request?
90.
If given the option,
I'm sorry?
if given the option, you would prefer
Right,
90.
right.
Okay.
And like I said, all the board meetings are webcast, so if a member of the industry or the audience or a consumer wants to see something immediately, the webcast is available immediately. So
Okay.
it would just give staff a little more time, depending on demands in the office.
Is the webcast available? Is it available just live, or is it available as a recording through a website?
Both.
Okay.
It's usually posted within a week.
It's posted to YouTube within a day, and then OIS can usually get it on your website within a week.
Okay.
My preference would be 60 days. I understand that there's, other things that you need to do, but I think just in the interest of transparency, I think my preference would be to have a shorter time. And I'm fine with, 30 days being just too tight, but I would lean towards having that. I know there's not like a huge number of people that are clamoring to see our minutes, but even still, I think it makes it just that much more accessible to folks who want to know, because 90 days is almost just to our next meeting as well. So
Okay.
yeah.
Dave, are you making that motion?
You making a motion to accept it at 60 days?
Yes, I'll make that motion to make it 60 days.
I'll second it.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? So, discussion from the public on this specific rule. Is there hearing none? Susan, let's take a vote, please.
Okay. Darren Van Steenwick,
Yes.
Dave Tamayo,
Yes.
Ronna Brand,
Yes.
Mike Duran, and Curtis Good.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then the next one we need to. Okay, so the next recommendation we're going to table that one.
Sorry, I thought you meant agenda item.
Oh no, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I know you're trying to move us along, Sabina.
Okay, so the next recommendation for changes or amendments or additions, in this case, to the board policy and procedures is on page 20. It's L7. This proposal is being added because a couple years ago when we had our internal audit done by the department, one item that was noted was that while we conducted CE audits for operator and applicator that year, we neglected to audit FRs that year. The reason why we elected not to audit FRs that year, because that's the year that 1970, Regulation Section 1970 came into play, requiring 5,000 of our current licensees to be live scan. So that made a huge impact to that workload in the office at that time. So we elected not to audit FRs that year. So we wrote this so that this identifies that we have the option of auditing, and it gives us a minimum at 3% or greater, which usually we run about 25% of operators at least.
Okay. Are there any specific discussion items on that? Any responses?
So again, you're looking for a motion?
Yes.
So just so I'm sure or clear on this, it's a minimum standard of 3%, essentially what you're suggesting for all categories each year?
Yes. And that's similar to, for example, Contractor State License Board.
Okay.
It
And that's
doesn't. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's the minimum standard, so that you obviously sometimes are exceeding that.
Always exceeding
Always.
that.
Okay.
Yeah. Except for the one year, like as I said, I elected for us not to do the FR category that year because we were so inundated with live scan results from the 5,000 individuals that were currently licensed that had to get live scan for renewal purposes.
Right. Okay. I will make the motion then.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Mike Duran seconds. Okay. Any further any discussion from the board on this? Okay, how about from the public? Any public comment? Okay, hearing none. Susan, would you take a vote, please?
Okay. Darren Van Steenwick,
Yes.
Dave Tamayo,
Yes.
Mike Duran, Rhonda Brand,
Yes.
and Curtis Good.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. So we are going to table the next agenda item. So moving on through through our agenda, we're going to talk about 1970.4. So I know Dave and Sabina have been working on this one. So if you wanted to step in on this, that'd be much appreciated.
Okay, so if you recall, we had language before us at our last meeting, and then industry and public had some really great comments and some suggestions, and so we had wanted to have a little bit more time to field those comments and ideas and get their input, and so that's what happened, and I know Kathy helped kind of field all that and kind of wrangle it all together and really kind of put those edits together. And so your handout today, and I'm assuming it's back on the counter for the public, is our new edition. And I know Robert also, we also had it was a big group effort to try to get this together. So a lot of the changes are not very substantive. There's a lot of changing the way that structures are referred to, and changing out the word shall to must. The two sections were also retitled to make it a little bit more clearer. So 1970.4 would now be titled Pesticide Disclosure Requirement for Structural Fumigations, so that we can have the difference between each of the notice requirements. And then .41 is pesticide pre-application notice requirements. And then .42 would then become pesticide post-application notice requirements. So we have pre-application and post-application. And that was some of the confusion, I know, reading the original 1970 .4 was that it wasn't clear what was pre and post and stuff. So that's why those sections happened. I have some additional edits that were brought to my attention right before the meeting that we can talk about after the board discusses this language. And if Dave has anything else, or Kathy.
I don't.
Okay. Well, we can go through each section if you want also.
Kathy, did you have any comments? Because you kind of took a breath like you were going to.
There is a county ag commissioner who intended to be here, and I don't know if that person is caught up in traffic, so
Okay, thank you. Sabina, you were saying before I cut you off?
I'm not sure what I was saying. So we can go through 1970.4 and kind of go over some of the changes. A lot of it's clarifying changes, and I know I'm not an industry member, so if there's an industry or practice issue you guys want to discuss on this language, I'd love to hear it. It just clarifies who has in whose possession that form, and it uses the actual title of the form in the section in the first sentence for clarification. That is the occupant's fumigation notice and pesticide disclosure form. And who has it, who signs it, that kind of information is a little bit more clarified. They put in the word multi-unit structures instead of multifamily dwellings. Does anybody have an issue with that? And the owner, we added the owner's designated agent instead of just the owner or manager. And then being for consistency's sake, added the word multi-unit structures to when we have to obtain the signatures of the occupants for, that's all in subsection A. Is any comments or suggestions on subsection A? Does it make sense? Or not?
Knee-jerk reaction is it makes sense.
And in practice?
looking for us to vote on this today or something? Or is
If you don't, if the board isn't comfortable voting on the language today, we don't have to. We just used everybody's comments and suggestions and brought it back to you so that you could see it and then talk about it.
No, I like that I have something very tangible now, but I would like a little bit.
Absolutely.
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 PCOC would be involved in this.
Yeah.
I would say I don't know, Kathy agrees, but we
Yeah.
just got this
Yeah.
over the finish line with all the interested parties. So
Yeah.
putting this off to the next meeting would be a good idea in my opinion.
Right.
There's more time for everybody to digest it. And
I very much appreciate you walking us through this, and I would like to continue to do that.
Okay.
But I would like to take this back to PCOC and
Right.
and kind of run it,
Yeah.
kind of just to get a lot more industry sets of eyes
Right.
on it.
And that's my concern was how does it really look in practice?
Yeah.
And is it practical? Is it reasonable? Is it something that, can it really be done? Is it burden?
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll have to kind of process it and make sure
Right.
that that we're all, when it says form whatever, that we're all thinking about, that we all
Right.
are looking at the same form and whatnot.
Right. I think a lot of it is in the new .41 and the new .42. A lot of it is somewhat redundant, but just changed for pre and post.
Yeah.
But that is all new text, so that is where there's going to be a lot of input, I have a feeling, and from the industry, because we really do need to see how it might work in real life.
So could you continue to walk us through? So we just
Sure.
talked about subsection 1970.4A. If you could walk us through B,
Right.
please.
So B.
I've got a request. So I'm very curious as to what the effect is or the reasoning behind changing from shall to must. I realize I'm sure there's some shade of
Where's Leslie?
difference, but
that started with the Cali PA stuff too, or the EPA stuff with DPR. Right, they're more preference for must than shall.
is it a matter of style or is it a matter of meaning?
Looks like we have somebody that is hopefully going to answer that question.
Yes.
Again, name and organization, please.
My name is Nathan Descharlis. I work with DPR Enforcement Branch. So the U.S. Supreme Court has issued a decision several years ago now that if you want to say that somebody has to do something, the only word that means that is must. Regulators and lawyers some used to prefer shall, but in common everyday English, I never tell my son you shall go to bed or you shall eat your vegetables. So using must, it's more clear, consistent enforcement. The word shall in contracts is very debatable and makes it inconsistent enforcement. So changing shall to must, it's one of the things we're doing in our C&T rule. When we want something to happen, we are using must, consistent with that Supreme Court decision.
I was not expecting that response.
So
does that make sense?
Yeah. If you guys are interested, you can Google shall versus must. The FAA has a really good explanation of kind of why they are changing. They changed everything. If you bother to read the C&T rule, there are very few uses of shall in that C&T rule. Almost everything is a must. So, and you look at pesticide labels, they never use shall. Applicators and other handlers must wear these pieces of equipment. So it's just making more consistent enforcement.
Okay.
It's a good enough explanation. So.
Sounds like he wasn't expecting that response either.
Yeah.
We just thought, moving forward, that we would start making the change as well and follow suit with DPR.
Yeah. It totally makes sense. I just...
While we're have a reg section open, we might as well make the changes, and it's for clarity's sake, also as we clean up all the language we can.
Yeah,
Yep.
So that's the same thing we're doing with our C&T rulemaking package. We're changing shalls to must every time we open up a code section.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, so Sabina,
Right.
Other questions?
I'm sure there will be, but just none at this exact moment. Thank you.
So B, really the only change there is to take out the word pesticide and put fumigant, because we did change the title of this section to be specific to structural fumigations. And again, the word shall to must. So a little bit more clarity there. C, again, the must and shall, and replace the word building with structure. I'm in a couple places there, clarifying about an adult occupant. Just a little bit more clarification. We don't want, an underage person signing off that they've received the information for leaving the structure. Where the properly signed form must be on site, in the second paragraph of subsection C. Thought that might be important in the possession of the licensed fumigator when the fumigant is released. Those are the changes for C. And then what used to be B is going to be turned into D, and that's just about the death or the serious injury relating to the structural fumigation. And that changed there to reflect the proper, the change in the title of the section. And then also expanded to include the owner and employee of the registered structural pest control company or member of the public must be reported immediately to the nearest structural pest control board office. We just kind of changed where the word immediately went. And then the rest of that is all strike through, which would be old language that we would be replacing or moving around to the other two new sections. Any questions about that? Or, I know it's a lot to digest, and I'm not asking for, any kind of declaration or any kind of anything right now about the language, but why we're talking about it. So 0.41, like I said before, is about pre-application notice, and we still had a couple small little edits, but since we're not going to be doing anything on it today, and hopefully we'll receive more additional comments and feedback, they're not so important now.
So did you, just for clarity's sake, did you pretty much take C, D, E, and F for the most part and just move them and make them new sections?
Right,
or
so-
and did you change a lot of language in those?
No, we refer back to 8538 also to
Okay.
make sure in each of those or the for the pre-application notice requirements, and some of them are it's all kind of, but it's clarified a little bit. That language was really confusing, the original language. I didn't understand what was going on, and I think it did everybody a disservice between the industry, the board staff, also, or enforcement, as well as consumers. They don't know what has to be where or when. Should they get an invoice? Should they not? Should they get a notice tacked to their door? So pre-application notice, and this is for pesticide, so both 41 and 42 address pesticide. I'm not going to go through each of these because they're kind of redundant on to some manner, because they each have a subsection D for a subsection about 42 has a subsection about death or serious injury, just like we talked about with 0.4. And then some of these are very similar. The door hanger, the invoice, the billing statement for the post-application notice requirements, just like we used to have in 0.4, like you said. Sorry. And then for pre-application in 0.41, we reference 8538 of the code, of course, because that's where some of those requirements come from.
I've got a question about subsection A.
In 41 or 42?
41. And where it says, talking about posted in a conspicuous place unless the owner or owner's agent objects, and I'm not clear what's the purpose of that, and because then it's putting the owner doesn't have to have a notification about it
I have
on
all the
site.
comments. Is that one of the, Kathy? 40.
Kathleen Boyle, Kathleen Boyle, Structural Pest Control Board. So, Dave, to answer your question, that was carried over. That actually is straight from 8538 of the Business and Professions Code. And so, because it was so nuanced, the way it's tucked, it's not easily read in 8538. And so, by clarifying the difference between a fume and then when we move over to branch 2 and 3 applications, it's specific. That particular statement is specific to commercial and industrial, in this case, structures, independent of. So, I mean, picture a warehouse situation or a big office complex, and maybe they don't want to advertise. There is a definition of conspicuous location. So apparently, way back when 8538 was developed, there must have been enough feedback to give the option of if the owner's agent objects to having these postings in a conspicuous location, then they had the option to go to the personal delivery or first-class mail, and now electronic mails provided. So, again, it was to help clarify because it's so overlooked in the law itself that at least by having it in the reg, it reiterates.
So, there's, and forgive me because this is, the details of this are obscure to me. So isn't the purpose of notification to help people who may be occupying that building, say, whether it's commercial or industrial? I mean, so
yes,
there's another requirement that if they don't have a posting, then each individual who may occupy or enter that building is going to receive notification? Is that what?
No, it does not take away the notification requirement. It's just the particular posting in a conspicuous place. So there's still 2 other options that occupants of that structure will be notified. So one of the examples of conspicuous location is mailboxes, laundry rooms, things that aren't necessarily, it's but not limited to type of phrase. So, for example, this building, we've had pest control within this structure. So rather than maybe putting a posting on the exterior of the building, notice is given to, say, the executive director or the manager of every unit within this structure. So the tenants within this structure or the occupants are, in fact, being notified. It may not be on the exterior of the building, which is one of 3 options.
So, like the manager of the building or whoever's in charge of that particular facility is notified, and that's considered sufficient to. And I realize this is in the code, but I'm kind of. It seems odd to me that the purpose.
So, if I can go back to
doesn't seem like the alternative really provide effective notification.
Honestly, I think if you have time to read it and sit with it for a little bit, I think by the
that's fine.
The March meeting, I think it'll be much clearer to you.
Okay, thanks.
Because also what it does from an industry standpoint is that there's certain steps that need to happen as far as notification goes, and who is responsible for what. And if we as industry notify whoever it is that we need to notify, and they then choose to not pass that on, or they then choose to handle it however they want to, we are not held responsible for their actions in that way.
No, it seems as though I agree. I'll need to look through it. So thanks.
Dave, just to comment on that, there are instances when we've posted properties and people go tear them down and they ask you not to post. So I think this is just assisting the industry when people do not want something visibly posted, like you mentioned, in a laundry room or at mailboxes or something, because we have had people just go tear them down.
Thanks. So,
I don't know if we got into the section there, but it's under 41B, and we're back to a may must.
yeah, sorry, that was one of the edits I was going to
Okay.
suggest if we got
I
to
was
the
going to
point
go back
where
to a shall must.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's one of them. Absolutely. There's a couple cleanups in this one, and there's another one in 42 that would be changed also. But since we're bringing it back, we have a chance to do that extra cleanup and really take some time and go through it and get some additional comment from industry and how it actually might work. I know it's a lot to look at all at once. Like Darren pointed out, some of it is just taken out of 1970 and just, put in the pre and post sections, and we tried to put everything in there to help clarify it, to provide a little bit more guidance to industry and to consumers. Hopefully, once we're done with the product, it'll be a great effort through everybody, I think.
I really like the direction this is going, and with the idea of separating into those 3 separate sections, the clarity. I think that once we get a chance to kind of look at it, because like you said, there's a lot going on. The clarity this is potential to provide is tremendous. I also want to thank you for adding the electronic mail in there, and the fact that it provides it as a standalone option, and we can work with our customers and still be able to meet their needs and desires for how they want to communicate with us.
Right. So I'm hoping that at the end, by March, we're going to have a really good product, and it's going to be, a collaborative effort that everybody can, 1, use in practice in real life, and 2, it can provide a lot of guidance.
So for a point of clarity, then, just so I can make sure that everybody here has the right steps moving forward. In March, what are you expecting? Are you expecting us to vote on this, or are you expecting us to bring comments back to then vote later on it?
I think I don't know what you feel, but I think we can.
Chris, please come forward.
I think
we're going to put you on the spot.
I want to say we can have a product ready for vote by March. It is only October. I think we can work offline with any other industry members or stakeholders, and get that language done, and you guys, of course. But I don't know.
No, I think it's, Mr. President, Chris Reardon, PCLC again. Yeah, I think it's reasonable. I'll work with council and Susan and with the fumigators. Hopefully, we can get back comments relatively quickly. Mm-hmm. I think with one caveat, if we do run into concerns that maybe can't resolve immediately, right, but we'll work with council to do that.
Well, yeah, because fumigators only impacts, only one of these sections essentially only impact fumigators. There's still, 41 and Section 41 and Section 42, which impact Branch 2 and 3. So we also have to make sure that mm-hmm. all that all parties have eyes on it.
Right, and that was my concern about how does it really look in real life. Is it burdensome?
Is this posted on the website yet?
Not yet, but it will be with the materials.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so I do know we have there's a couple of people that want to comment. I know there's Kathy, and then Michelle. I want to make sure that you have I want to point you out. Hi, how are you? Wanted to make sure that you have a chance to speak on this as well, and representing County Ag. So either one of you, please. We can hear you. Good morning, Kathy.
Kathleen Boyle, Structural Pest Control Board. Just for the benefit of the members as well as the audience, in addition to this text related to 1970.4 and the additions, but especially the 1970.4 and before you, tied to that is actually the form, the occupant's fumigation notice / pesticide disclosure notice. So the notion was wait till at least we got feedback from this particular meeting. And in the meantime, from this meeting up until March, also be developing or making changes and taking in comments to make changes to the actual form itself that's referenced in Part A of 1970.4.
Okay. Very good. And so Chris is making notes. I can see him writing fervently to make sure that fumigators get a chance to look at that as well.
Good morning. Michelle Tome, Santa Clara County Agriculture. And I think that the rewrite with the post notices are something that we can live with. I know that a lot of commissioners did not want to see the door hangers leave, but I would just wanted to point out that the one instance where it is required is that when there's a tenant, you have to leave a written notice. If you're dealing with the owner, you can do it electronically, but I don't know if that's going to create some headaches for industry. Whether is it a tenant or is it an owner? And you have to leave a written notice for a tenant. So I just wanted to put that on your radar. I didn't know if, like, for all interior, if it's just easier for industry, just to make it easy, you have to leave a written. But I just wanted to point it out. The way it's written right now, we have it for a requirement for tenant. The commissioners get way too many complaints every year from tenants that never get that pre-notice. And the only notification they get is from that written. So it's that pre-notice it's falling down in the communication, which that's what things always come down to. It's always the communication part. So commissioners really want to have that written for tenants. We think it's a big consumer protection regulation. But I just wanted to point that out to you. So I don't know for industry if that'd be a headache for some guys to know, do I leave it? Do I not? Can I do it electronically? Do I leave a written? It'd be easier if it's just all interior. And I know that some commissioners still want to see that. And so I don't know what PRAC has decided because they saw this, but they too want to take a look at it, the commissioners, to see if it's something that we can all settle with.
Okay.
So I just wanted to put that up.
Now, and really what you're concerned with, just for point of clarity, is the communication to the tenants that as if they had any interior treatments, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And so potentially, if that tenant opts for some sort of electronic communication,
No,
how would you feel about that?
In that regard, I don't know how they would get the electronic to the person. As it is right now, it's demonstrating that there's a breakdown in communication. All commissioners up and down the state get complaints constantly from tenants that they never get that pre-notice. And then to make it electronic, the company said, well, I gave it to them electronically. Well, they didn't get the pre-notice ahead of time, so nobody's going to be none the wiser going in. So if you have to leave something written, it's inconspicuous and when they open the apartment. Because right now, the written notice is working.
Mm-hmm.
It's notifying that person before they walk in. They're like, wait a minute. What do you mean there's a pest control company that came into my apartment? I didn't know that. And then we get called. Actually, where it goes is because the written notice just requires to have the company information, what you applied. It goes to the health department, which circles around and gets to us because the health department knows to direct those calls to us. So this person's already had to call several places before it gets to us.
Okay.
And we get a lots every year.
Okay.
So, anyway, and I also wanted to just make a comment with the OFN that since that's being revised, I don't know if for industry, if it would be helpful to have a box on there, because right now it says notify neighbors about cats, but we've run into issues with the fumigators in our county where it's skipped over. They think that there's an animal in the house, but they're not sure. They ask the homeowner, oh yeah, I think they're out. And we've had a couple of cat deaths. And it was the homeowners, oh, I think they're outside. Well, the fumigator fumigates and, well, they weren't outside. And so the fumigators, it would be nice to have like a checkbox ahead of time to the owner that, yes, I have animals on the property. So it starts the conversation. It doesn't leave it up to the field rep once they get to the site. Wait a minute, I see food bowls. Are they in? Are they out? And sometimes the owner's there, sometimes the owner agent. They would have liked to have something on the form. And our fumigators are just creating their own cat form because with pets. And just thought I'd put that on your radar. I don't know if it would be helpful for industry, but it might be nice to have a checkbox.
I'm sure that that's something that Chris is going to bring up as well, as because we have the opportunity to evaluate all of these things. That's a good discussion point, and that's another interesting point about the about the tenants and kind of the post application. I wonder if, I wonder if maybe there's I don't know.
Yeah, I know that you guys want to go paperless and things, and in this case, I just don't see a way with the drop down of communication of it working. And I can I can see to the exterior. It's not as sensitive of a site. You apply things around the exterior. We do get calls from people that accidentally get their house treated and they never signed up for service. And it's rare. It's just a few calls a year. Many times we could talk to the person through and they never lodge a complaint. They're like, hey, you got a free service. But then you get those, especially in our county, that are very anti-chemical. And those fall through to a complaint. And so it happens, but again, it's exterior. So I don't know if the consumer protection grant has got to be a small percentage with the numbers that are out there. So I can let that one go. I don't know if other commissioners can, but
the interior one is a separate
interior. I
conversation.
think it's too sensitive.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. Yeah. That's. Thank you. That's very valuable information, and that's another thing that I'm sure that PCOC will be taking back to their members as well to discuss. Chris, did you have a comment?
Yep.
No. Please stay. You're not going anywhere, Michelle. You drove here for this. You were going to sit.
Yes, I did.
I'm paying close attention because the commissioners obviously are an important component of this. How do you define interior?
Are you talking about so Chris, are you referring interior of a, of
an apartment,
of a residence,
of a residence?
Because it would be because it's there's another section of the code for commercial and industrial. So you have office complexes would be considered something completely different. Then it would be a home going inside a home. It'd be a residence. Sometimes that's a tenant. Sometimes that's the owner. That's where you get kind of that gray area. It's because I know I've caught. Not caught, but it's you think that you're dealing with the owner of the home. Well, it ends up being the tenant, not the owner. And that happens a lot. But, what's the likelihood we're going to get a complaint from somebody that's contracting for the service? It happens to be the tenant. Well, if you're going to read the letter of the law, you have to leave a written. They're not the owner of the property. So it's mainly for apartment and condominium type situations where you're going inside, you're treating for interior pests, you're having to get the keys to someone's residence and go in.
So specifically, you're talking about more kind of multi-unit housing.
Multi-unit housing is the
okay, not standalone rental homes.
Yeah.
I'm talking the generality. I'm talking the rule, not the exceptions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and as a rule, it's the apartment dweller because they don't own the property. They don't have any say in what's applied to the property. They need to be given notice. But some of them, break down in communication. So that's what we're talking about interior.
Okay. That's very valuable information. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any other comments or questions on this topic? From the public, any other comments or questions? Thank you very much. So that was a fantastic discussion. Thank you, Sabina, for all of the work you've done on this. So moving forward, we already know that that the goal is that we're going to put it on the agenda in March.
Correct.
To vote on this. All the interested parties are going to will have access to this language to then be able to take it back to their respective organizations and groups and whatnot, so that they can essentially view this, get any comments back to specifically Susan, and then Susan can then transfer those comments onto whoever needs to be. Whoever needs to see them,
right?
For the goal of again voting on this in March. Does that sound appropriate?
Absolutely. And Kathy, can I ask you to update the couple non-substantive changes before you upload it to the materials? Just the couple Curtis pointed out: the must and the shall and the mays, and the just so we have a better product going forward for people to look at. Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dave, do you have a comment? You sure? Okay.
Great. Well, we'll see it again in March. You'll be sick of it by then.
Fantastic. Thank you. Awesome.
Well, okay, hold on. So Sabina was saying that when we post it to the material, meaning that we would post it.
Do you need to speak into the microphone?
Yeah.
Meaning that we would post it to the board meeting materials, but I think we need to give everybody more lead time than that. So
No, I meant it for this meeting. Like we can update the materials for this meeting with this language.
And everybody's comfortable with finding it there if you want to.
It's probably
chime in.
It's probably the best place for it.
Okay.
I would assume.
We can make it a separate.
Yeah, I'd like it a separate link on there.
Right, that's what I was thinking too. I don't want to mess with the board meeting materials that's already out there in the public,
add the
but
link.
let's make a separate link for this.
Under the board meeting materials, when you go to the calendar, there's a agenda and materials link. We can add a separate one, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Fantastic. So Susan, talking about Section 1997.
Okay, so the next one on your agenda is CCR Section 1997. That's our WDO fee that's established in regulation. So we had our first fee increase that went through with an effective date of July 1st, 2019. That increased the fee from $2.50 per activity to $3 per activity. Then, based on recommendations from the budget office and from staff, we did an emergency regulation package that we had hoped from $3 to $4 per activity fee. We had hoped that emergency regulation package would get approved and we would have the same effective date of July 1st, 1920. That didn't happen. It did get approved by Office of Administrative Law on August 23rd of 2019. So the $4 went into effect on August 23rd of 2019. An emergency regulation package is only good for 180 days. So while we submitted the emergency regulation package to OAL and it was approved, then you have to go back and do the full rulemaking process and submit all that paperwork to Office of Administrative Law. So we started working on all that. Where we are when that process is, it is currently in the budget office. Our 180 days expires February of next year, but the 180 days can be extended thereafter. But currently, the full rulemaking package for the fee increase to $4 is in the budget office under review.
So where does that leave us? So we're waiting on them then
At the mercy of the department.
to make it permanent then. Okay.
Yes, because it's currently in the pre-review process because all regulations have to have the pre-review process now. So that's where we are. So it's going up the chain to get approval from DCA, and then we'll eventually get a file with Office of Administrative Law. So good thing is we do have that extension period should we need it.
I'm just thinking of that 18 to 24 months time frame that you were talking about before.
I know.
Is that applicable to this?
No. Well, I'm already pushing. I made a phone call again this week to the budget office and asked how long is it going to be there. So, I plan on staying on top of it and making a lot of noise.
Yeah,
Okay.
DCA's aware of the expiration date. They'll work with us to get it done in time.
Okay. Very good. And then the last point would is there any public comment on that specific comment from the board or comment from the public on that specific agenda item? Okay, and then moving on to the next one, which is essentially AB 2138 compliance. I don't know who wants to handle the brief discussion about that one.
I know, Sabina, do you have a more current update?
It's in budgets.
Oh, that was in budget as well?
It's sitting in. So DCA, essentially every program in DCA had to do this. So they've got, 40 identical reg packets to review. So my guess is they'll all be moving forward at a similar time, but currently they're still in budget review. So, but that'll be going forward as well.
But that could...
It needs to be in place by July 1, 2020, so that it'll be happening, and the department's obviously aware of that too. So it'll be moving forward here shortly, is my guess.
So that's out of our hands. we have
Yes.
done everything that we need to do.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. It's moving at whatever it's supposed to do. Okay. That's what we need to know. Okay, so moving on to I'm sorry, any other comments from the public on that? Dave, you're looking at me funny? No, you're good? Okay. You really want to make a comment, but you're biting your tongue, I can tell. Okay. I'm trying to encourage you to say what you really want to say, but you don't want to, so that's fine. Okay, so moving on to legislative update. Is there what's going on with AB 613?
The last two hearings were canceled for this legislative session, so we may be seeing this again next year. Not sure at this point.
Okay.
The next one in your board package is AB 1788,
That was put on suspense.
right? And then the last one in your board package is Senate Bill 53, and that one is also on the suspense file. So as far as I know, these three are not going anywhere unless they come back next legislative session, which they may in 2020.
But we've specifically planned our meeting in March to be able to address them before they get out of their
First house origin.
their house origin.
Yeah.
Okay. Any comments from the public on any of those? Excellent. Moving right along. Annual election of board president and vice president.
Curtis, are you willing to serve as president next year? Well, I would.
That was an awful long pause. Are you sure? Are you sure?
I would nominate Curtis to be president next year.
I second that nomination. Any comment from the board? I'm sorry. I just thought that was it. I thought that we got to do. Any public comment from the public on this? Okay, so we will vote for president and then vote for vice president. So Susan, roll call.
Darren Van Sneewick.
Yes.
Dave Tamayo.
Yes.
Ronna Brandt.
Absolutely.
Mike Duran.
Yes.
And does Curtis vote? Okay.
Is Curtis going to abstain on this one?
No, don't abstain.
And then I would like to nominate Dave Tamayo to serve as vice president.
I'll accept the nomination.
Fantastic. So we have a vote and we have a motion and a second. So any comment from the public on this?
You'd probably ask for additional nominations, I would think. But
Are there any additional nominations?
I'm surprised Sabina didn't do that for the president. Okay.
Any comment from the public? Hearing none. Susan, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Okay. Darren Van Sneewick.
Yes.
Dave Tamayo.
Yes.
Ronna Brandt.
Absolutely.
Mike Duran.
Yes.
And Curtis Good.
Yes.
Excellent. So moving right along, future agenda items. So we already know one thing that we're going to be talking about in March, 1970.4 and subsequent sections.
Correct.
Anything else that we know that we're going to have to address at the next meeting? Potentially any legislation?
Right.
Yes. And hopefully we'll have some legislation at least, because I attempted this year to get someone to author two sections that you board members have previously approved and authorized me to get an author for. I was unsuccessful this legislative session in finding someone to pick that up. So I will be at it again next year. Chris, I'll probably see if I can solicit your help as well. And then any other legislation that may come to our attention by the end of February when bills have to be submitted at the Capitol. Those, of course, will be on the agenda for review in March. Yes, sir.
Is the March meeting coinciding with PCOC, or it's not this year, is it?
No, no, it's not. The legislative days is in
Yeah.
like mid part of April.
Yeah, okay. Unfortunate.
Yeah, it is unfortunate, but we specifically picked the March because by the time mid-April came around, we were already too late on taking we were already too late on dealing with several bills.
Right.
So we'll try it this year, and we'll see what happens. If you don't like it, you can change it next year.
Work on it.
Yeah, we'll work on it. Any other agenda items for the next meeting? How about from the public? Anything you want to? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I thought you were asking. I'm good.
Okay. Anything else from the public on future agenda items? Okay. Let's look at the board calendar. So the board. So we have March of 2020. We have 11th and 12th in Sacramento, and then we have July 7th and 8th in Southern California, and then we have the annual meeting in October that we need to that we'll need to plan. It looks like we'll have to do it before October 16th, unless we have a meeting there in the middle there, correct? Because it needs to be 100 days?
Mm-hmm. Needs to be 100 days, or we adopt the proposed decisions as written. Right, right. And we're doing a lot of mail votes now based on the criteria that you've approved. October, I haven't talked with the strategic planning unit yet, but we need to start thinking about updating our strategic plan as well. So I thought we may be able to do the Sacramento meeting in October and coordinate that in conjunction with the board meeting.
Okay. So when do you, when do you guys want?
I'm pretty good, Chuck. Dave.
Dave, what do you think?
13th and 14th.
That's better for me. I have a board meeting the week before.
Okay. So it looks like the 13th and 14th.
I can't make it on the second or fourth Tuesday of.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, so that would be
2021, does that work for everyone?
You could do the 14th and 15th.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
If you need to.
That the 15th might be a problem for me. The 20th and 21st would avoid that potential problem.
Curtis, how would you feel about the 20th and 21st?
Yeah.
Mike, 20th and 21st?
That would work for me.
Okay. Rana, you good with that? Yes. So let's do that.
Okay, so 20th, 21st here in Sacramento.
Yep.
Okay, and I'll reach out to the strategic planning unit in DCA and get some information in regards to our next strategic plan.
Sounds good.
Okay, we said the 20th, the 21st, and 22nd?
No, we said 20th and 21st.
Okay, because the second and fourth Tuesday I'm tied up.
Yeah, but that's the 21st. The 20th is the third Tuesday.
Third.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any comment from the public on that? Excellent. I don't think that we have a closed session. I think that we addressed that yesterday, didn't we?
Yes.
What?
We have a short one.
you have to do the.
We have a short one.
Okay. Okay.
Oh.
So apparently we need to clear the room. I mean, thank you all for coming. Yeah, we will be adjourning after this. So thank you all very much.